This happened to me a few weeks ago. I was attending an interview for an admin position at a small business. I was in the waiting area sitting next to another candidate, another girl about my age. Now, when I mean small business, I mean there's only the manager in the building with us two. The manager peeked out of his office door and asked me to come in. He was an older man who had blotchy red skin and was starting to bald. I took a seat next to his desk and we began the interview. He asked the usual, "Tell me about yourself," and "Why would you be a good fit for this position?" etc. I was confident that the interview was going well so far. Then it got weird. He then asked me if I planned on working here until I die. I was taken aback. At the time, I thought this was perhaps a trick question, so I jokingly replied, "I'll live forever." The manager wasn't humored by this. He gave me a horrible scowl. I was feeling very uncomfortable and wanted to leave. His next question was also creepy. He asked if I had a boyfriend. "No," I replied. Again, he gave me an ugly scowl. I was already planning my escape. Something was definitely wrong with this guy. He then started scurrying through his desk and pulled out a large lollipop, the kind with the spirals on them. "Sorry, you seem a little tense. Here, take this." He was licking his lips. My legs were trembling. "Okay, sorry, sir, but I have to leave." I rushed out of his office. I saw the other girl and told her to leave with me right now. We left the building and caught the nearest taxi out of there while I explained everything to her. The thought of going to another interview fills me with utter dread. I have had anxiety and depression since I turned 16, and along with medication, I decided to try out an alternative medicine and treatments like yoga. So I looked for a good yoga place, and it turned out it was just a minute away from where I lived, so I started going there. The teacher was a man who I honestly thought was gay when I first met him, so I didn't give any thought to it when he kept coming over to correct my position and telling me I'm very flexible. I know this sounds normal, but it turned weird later. The next day, he asked me to come into his office and chat about why I started yoga and all. He proceeded asking questions such as, "Have you ever been drunk and in a compromising position and had your picture taken? Have you been intimate with a guy?" and all that. I had a knot in my stomach and I froze the entire time. He took me to a dark room where we were alone and kept trying to suggest positions where his hand was in mine. He started massaging my shoulders, and when the session was done, asked me for a hug. I didn't know what to say, so I nodded, and he gripped me as tight as he could, and I was struggling for him to let go. He kept whispering, "Don't be scared. I am your well-wisher." While I left, he said, "Bye, baby." I almost threw up in my mouth. Needless to say, I asked for a full refund. I live in a pretty nice community where not much really happens. One night during the summer at about 8 to 10 at night, I was asleep already, so this is what I was told. Some middle-aged man rang our doorbell, and my father answered. I guess the man told my dad that, "I'm your son's friend from a while back," something like that. My dad immediately knew something was sketchy and told him his son was 5 years old and closed the door. You might think that would be the end, right? Wrong. It turns out there was a van parked out of sight behind the trees. Our neighbors saw and called the cops, thank the Lord. When the police arrived, they came in our house and went right in my parents' room. We had a dog then, but she didn't bark at the time. They asked questions and looked around. Turns out that while my dad was talking, someone from the van walked around the house and one of our motion sensors triggered, and he must have been scared by it. He bolted through our neighbor's yard and went back into the van. They have not been caught. Thank you to the neighbor. To the van man, let's not meet. So this was when I was like 17. I was staying in the psychiatric emergency care unit at the hospital. It's for short stays, a week at most. They evaluate you and see whether they're going to ship you off to the proper psych hospital or send you on your way. Most people in this section aren't like crazy, usually just suicide attempts, people who had short manic episodes, drug or alcohol-fueled psychosis or whatever. Anyway, it was a small area, a rec room. A short hall with 6 to 7 rooms, the nurse's office behind glass at the end of the hall, next to the rec room, and then like a little outside bit. Each person in their own room, and above the room was a light, and if the light was on, it meant there was movement in the room. One night, I convinced multiple nurses to give me Valium before bed. Would usually be given 1 or 2, but going up to multiple nurses, I managed to hustle about 8. I was laying in bed completely zoned out from my Valium, with my hand over my eyes. I had left my light still on, when at the point I hear my door open. I assumed it was a nurse checking on me, but I was so completely zoned out I didn't move my hand and just peeked through the tiny crack between my fingers. It wasn't a nurse. It was the dude in the room next to mine. He was crouched down like in a frog stance, kind of shuffling over by my bed, still in that position. I didn't move. I was pretty wigged out. I was in such a haze I thought I was dreaming. He was directly beside my bed, crouched down, head in hands. He was whispering creepy shit and inaudible nonsense. It took some time to process when I swung my hand off my eyes and sat up and jumped and ran out of my room. At this point, the nurses noticed. One nurse followed him and came into my room and questioned me. I explained everything. I was still calm from the Valium and insisting there wasn't an issue and that I wanted to go back to sleep. I don't know what they said or did to him. When I woke up the next day, he was completely normal and asked me if I wanted to play cards. This happened to me perhaps 20 minutes ago now, and has left me very shaken up. It's 6:30 in the morning and I need more sleep, but I don't think I'm going to be dozing off anytime soon. So, the guy at the door. I think I should probably start by telling you that I live in a pretty rural area with my younger brother and my dad. It's not literally farmland or anything, but it's a small town in Scotland by the sea. And typically not much goes amiss around here except for drunk people regularly getting rescued from the large hill with a large amount of steep drops that they felt inclined to climb in the pitch dark. It's a quiet place, a nice place, but now I'm paranoid as all hell. Somebody knocked hard at the door, real hard, startled me out of sleep. At first, I was thinking I slept in and it was the post. I did nothing. My dad would get it, probably for him anyways. But when then they knocked again, it was then I realized that everyone was still asleep, and it was still dark outside. They knock again, and again. Now I'm sure it's gonna be the police or something like that. Has to be. There's another knock, and then they try the goddamn handle. The door isn't locked. I can't take it anymore. I'm up out of bed with clothes on and reaching for the handle myself. I know. Probably not all the smartest thing to be doing as a young female. Hell, as anyone. But I was still not totally awake and absolutely terrified that someone was going to come into our house or something. Rob it while I laid there awake. So I, a 17-year-old girl, very carefully opened the door. And there he is. The guy. He's wearing a gray puffer jacket with a jumper underneath, if I remember correctly. He's had glasses on his face, sort of half bald. "Hi," he says. "Hello," I reply. I'm not quite scared yet because I've only been up for a few minutes now. I have no idea why I wasn't immediately compelled to slam the door in his face. He wasn't a policeman. He wasn't anyone official, but I must admit, I was a little curious. Then he spoke again. The young lassie, meaning girl maybe my age, ran up this way. Your house was the only one with the light on. She didn't come in here, did she? I parked my car on the street and she bolted. No, I replied. He swore, talked about something how he'd seen her go up this way and then perhaps she jumped on the fence in their back garden. Then he left. I don't think he said, "Sorry for disturbing you," or anything like that before he walked away, heading out of our garden and back onto the street again, I think. I don't know. I immediately shut the door and just sort of stood there. I was most certainly awake now. Jesus Christ. My dad is up now and I tell him what happened. He asked if I'm okay, as I think he could see I was pretty wired. I lock the door, check all the windows are shut, try to go back to bed, but it won't work. So I get myself a glass of water, and here I am, thoroughly shaken. Was the man lying, or telling the truth? Which one of those options is worse? My head is swimming with the half-formed theories and one very strong thought. Man at the door, let's not meet again. Edit. It's light now, and in the back garden, due to the fact that it was raining last night, we can see several obvious footprints leading across the grass, and to the fence that separates our garden from the neighbors. Edit 2. We've contacted the police. Although they didn't say much, I do feel a little bit better about things now. Thank you for everyone urging me to talk with them.